Hello, my name is Maxwell Barton, and today we shall look at the Apollo 1 disaster. On January 27, 1967, 3 brave men were killed during a test of the Apollo 1 lunar landing program. They are as followed: Command Pilot Virgil Grisham, Senior Pilot Edward White, and Pilot Roger Chaffee. But what happened to these poor souls on that cruel January day in Cape Canaveral? How did the pod malfunction? And how was it remediated and suppressed? Today I will walk you through the Apollo 1 disaster. The Apollo 1 Ors 204 was to be the first manned test of the Apollo Command Service module to orbit Earth. It was to rendezvous with the Gemini 12 during orbit, which would be a major watershed for the National Aeronautics and Space Administration in the 60s. Each member of the team was handpicked from the best of the best American pilots to participate in the momentous occasion. The tragedy that struck these men is truly ineffable, for on that unforgiving January day, the same day of the World Outer Space Treaty, and 5 years later the withdrawal of American troops from Vietnam, a fire hit the pod during a routine blast-out test at approximately 6:31 p.m. At 2:42 p.m. Virgil Grisham smelled a foul odor comparable to sour milk. Tests were conducted, but nothing out of the ordinary was discovered. 3 minutes later the test was delayed again due to a quickly solved hatch malfunction. Between 3 o'clock and 5:40 p.m. there were several more problems causing delays, including pressure malfunction, oxygen alarm malfunctions, and communication errors. At 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time the test was stopped at T-10 seconds. All 3 men were in position. 30 seconds later the first report started. Chaffee reported a fire broke out in the pod and the crew was in need of immediate evacuation, but help never came. Grisham and White sent similar frantic messages to command with no response. A circumflex, "We've got a bad fire, let's get out. We're burning up." Grisham screamed into the microphone with dead silence on the opposite end. Some mechanics begin to report their communications going offline and TV screens flashing with "I'm reporting a bad fire. I'm getting out." Whitta's frightened scream was the last thing heard from the astronauts before communications went completely down. 17 seconds after the outbreak of the fire, all 3 men lay dead. After the Apollo 1 disaster, Apollo 204 Review Board was created in order to find the ignition source and improve future models. The pod was immediately disassembled by NASA's most brilliant minds. Every part was thoroughly investigated and examined, even performing autopsies on each of the fallen astronauts. They concluded that there was more than one major reason for the disaster. The ignition was most likely caused by a small copper wire removed of its Teflon shell by excessive opening and shutting of the hatch, further exacerbated by the many flammable objects in the pod. The pure oxygen atmosphere in the cabin made it all the more flammable, allowing the spark from the wire to easily ignite the ship. The hatch was also discovered to be inherently flawed. A vent was required to be opened before the hatch in order to equalize pressure. However, the vent was next to the ignition of the fire and was unable to be reached, therefore the hatch could not be opened by the crew. They were stuck. The board finally found that the test planners had failed to identify the test as hazardous. The emergency equipment, such as gas masks, were inadequate to handle this type of fire, that fire, rescue, and medical teams were not in attendance, and that the spacecraft work and access areas contained many hindrances to emergency response, such as steps, sliding doors, and sharp turns. The political fallout was enormous, considering that the US is in the middle of the Cold War and space race with the Soviets. Outrage was at a consensus around our nation, and we were the laughingstock of every state and satellite in the USSR. This prompted separate investigations of NASA, the Senate, the House, and even Lyndon Johnson. The command module went over a complete redesign. The cabin was kept at 60% oxygen as opposed to 40%. Flammable nylon used in the cruise space suits was replaced with flame retardant beta cloth. A self-extinguishing system is installed. plumbing is covered with superior insulation, and over 1,400 wiring problems were solved. Apollo 1 will always be in our mind and hearts as one of the greatest American tragedies, but where there is darkness there is always be light, and thanks to the brave men's great sacrifice we were able to improve the model to be safer for all subsequent Apollo missions. American men